Hey guys, how's it going? Robert Warshak here, and this morning when I hopped on and I saw this news, super excited. I didn't think I was going to be able, or I didn't think this news was going to come up for at least another week or two, because I know the summit that a few people went to was just a couple days ago. So it's super cool that they're releasing it now so we can have like a kind of sneak preview and what the new year brings, and that's going to be the Year of the Dragon. Exciting stuff. This is exciting stuff. As you can tell, I'm excited. Exciting. All right, so for those of you unfamiliar with how we do this video, we're going to cover basically everything that they talked about, give our views and opinions on it, how we think it'll either make things better, make things worse, doesn't really matter. And the first thing that we're going to talk about is something they announced like forever ago, and it's still not in the game, and that's basically the ranking going all the way back to 50, allowing newer players to be able to play in a playground of happiness and flowers up until they hit about rank 15 is where Doom and Despair hits and starts to take a hold. The stars it takes to rank up through 50 through 16 is 3 stars. From 15 to 11 we can see is now 4 stars, and then from 10 to 1 is 5 stars, the same as it is now. So for every player that's below rank 10, these changes do nothing. They actually have zero impact on any of your gameplay at all. So this is basically only for the new / intermediate players that are between the ranks of 50 to 11. That is basically the only impact. So people are like, what do you think about the new ladder changes, Rob? I'm like, I won't see a thing. I will never see any of these ranks because we only get set back 4, at the beginning of each season. If we always hit legend or rank 1 or rank 2 or whatever, we only normally go back to 5 or 4. And then with that, we'll never see a higher ranks. So they have zero impact. So this only like applies to those between the ranks that actually hits and the stars were decreased. From there they have a little video going over the Year of the Dragon. I actually watched the video first, which I don't like. You could watch the video, but at the end of the video I said that's it. I said that's all, and then as I scrolled through it, there was more and more to this, so I'm glad I kept scrolling. So Hall of Famed card, guys. I don't want to go too far down, but we've got some cards I didn't really think was going to be touched on, one of them being Naturalize. This has been a Druid utility card for a long time now. At the beginning of the Hearthstone state, Naturalize it didn't see almost any play. Giving your opponent 2 cards was viewed as worse than killing an opponent's minions. But as we know, more and more powerful minions are being printed, and the ability to kill them for just 1 mana and then give your opponent 2 cards, which is sometimes not the worst thing in the world if their hand consists of like 9 cards, right? Or 8 and they mill 1. It's really not as bad as what was viewed upon when the card was like first coming out and people were just playing with the stuff, right? So Naturalize is one of those cards that, enables really big combos like Hadronox. It's a really cheap removal with cards like, if you're playing a Togwaggle deck, it allows you to mill your opponent's deck and kill your opponent's creatures. I mean, it's just one of those cards that you really don't think about as being powerful, but it actually has been not a front runner, but definitely a staple in one of the cards that makes the decks work so well in the past Druid decks over, I want to say, the past like year or two. So may not something you've been thinking about is Naturalize, like, wow, just a 1 mana card, but it actually is like a really key contender in a lot of these Druid decks, like I said, in the past year or two. Doomguard. Okay, so this one I was like, Doomguard, like, he's a good demon, but he's not an amazing demon. But then you think about it, this guy has been in a Zoo Warlock or a Demon Warlock, or basically been in a lot of Warlock decks since vanilla. We're talking like a staple in Zoo since vanilla. The card hasn't changed, and they can't print anything better than Doomguard because a 5 mana 5/7 charge, it's hard to beat that. And as we know, charge is a mechanic that's been very powerful in Hearthstone. A lot of changes to charges have occurred. A lot of people dislike charges. You think of Leroy Jenkins, for example. I thought that card was going to be in this Hall of Fame. Unfortunately, it is not. I was thinking Leroy would for sure have been in here, but he's not. So Doomguard being targeted, which is a charge, maybe we'll see something with Warlock that if Doomguard was around would be really good. Maybe he's just one of those cards that they really can't print anything. He limits design space. As a common phrase people use when describing like whether cards should be added or removed to the game. So Doomguard is one of those guys that's been around for a really long time. It's hard to print anything better than him for 5 mana in the demon slot. So Doomguard leaving, you don't hear me complaining. I've never been a fan of Cube Warlock. I've never been a fan of Zoo. I'm not a fan of decks that like just win in one turn and there's nothing your opponent can do about it. Granted, we played those decks before, like Togwaggle and stuff, but there is things your opponent can do to beat Togwaggle. Demonic Project, for example, is a great card. Mojo Master is now a great card. So there are ways to stop some of the combo decks that we do play. And Divine Favor, this back when like Secret Paladin was a thing, I think more so Secret Paladin era, did I hate Divine Favor more than anything. There was actually a time where like aggressive Paladin was a thing. It didn't need Baku or Genn or any of that. It was just an aggro Paladin, and it was disgusting. It would just throw up on the board Divine Favor, draw, draw, draw. Now we have, you know, the likes of Odd Paladin, where again it throws up onto the board, and they use Divine Favor to draw back. Hopefully their opponent's good, right? So their opponent has lots of cards in their hand. They're a good player, so let's just not steal those cards, but let's draw as many cards as our opponent has in their hand, because they got a lot, because they're a pretty solid player. They don't throw up on the board, right? I'm just kidding. So Divine Favor is one of those like really, really powerful comeback mechanics for the more aggressive style paladins that utilize like a large portion of their hand very early on in the game. I did not like Divine Favor at all. I don't like my opponent being able to just play things not smart, but like just, you know, if you have Divine Favor in your hand, it is in your best interest to play every minion in your hand, whether that's actually the correct play or not, just to get the board space down, just to be able to redraw that many more new cards to your hand. Because, you know, the less cards you have, the more cards you draw, the better this card looks, the deeper in the deck you get, and the more answers or more board burst or more weapons or whatever, you know, components you're looking to win that match, you'll draw. So I did not like Divine Favor at all. So I'm glad to see this card go. It wasn't a card that I was like on my radar of like, you know, this needs to be Hall of Famed, because in my opinion, me going against Odd Paladins, while it is really annoying, I don't really mind playing against the deck, because we know exactly what Odd Paladin does. We know exactly what's in their deck, and playing around that is really simple. Like, we just know exactly basically what they're going to do most turns, and then we just play around that, and it's not so bad. It is slightly annoying to play against just power level, but you know, playing Warrior or Warlock or even Druid against Odd Paladin, I'm having a field day. You throw in a Wild Pyromancer into your deck and they just concede. All right, moving down to the bread and butter though. This is the stuff right here. Genn and Baku. So first of all, I know the Hall of Fame is very confusing to a lot of players, so I'll try to describe the dust refunds as easy as possible. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this, but I just thought I'd mention it. So basically, when all of these cards, the Hall of Fame cards, not all cards, just the cards that are classified as being Hall of Famed, get moved basically to wild, is what that means. You'll get full dust refund. So if you have Genn or Baku in your collection, you will get back 1,600 dust for having that card, and you also get to keep the card. So it's like, because you have this card and it got moved to wild and no longer standard, here's 1,600 dust to go craft another legendary that you can play with in standard, and we're also going to let you keep the card, which you can then play with in wild and or disenchant for an additional 400 dust, which is actually what it's worth when you disenchant. So full dust value is the 1,600, and then like you can go disenchant it like normal for 400. If you have a golden version, you will get 3,200 dust back, because that is the full dust count of the card, and then again, if you disenchant it, you'll get the 1,600. So it's in your best interest, guys, to craft the Hall of Fame cards before they rotate, so you may get your full dust refund and be able to dust them for an additional dust cost. So I'm sorry if that is confusing. If you have questions, go to the comment section. I'll try to clean them up and answer them, but I thought I'd mention that because I know people are going to ask. So Baku and Genn, these have been really big problem cards for the meta. I never really got frustrated over these guys. I know, like, for example, Kibler really dislikes these guys. I mean, he's made multiple videos going over them. I fully understand where he comes from with his points. I agree that these guys are problem cards. I just honestly like got to the point where it's just like, they're either going to change the card or not. I don't even want to think about complaining about it anymore. Same thing as Rexar. Like, I hate Rexar so much. Randomly generate a minion. Like, you put Rexar in the deck and now your deck goes toe to toe with a control deck. As a control warrior player, that feels like shit, because we get Dr. Boom. Dr. Boom is nowhere near as good as Rexar, and Rexar is in a hunter deck, which is an aggressive style deck, and I'm actually the control deck, and you have better utilities than me. That makes me very upset. So seeing these guys go, we basically have seen the past like year-ish that a lot of the most powerful decks in the game are like, for example, Odd Rogue. that was basically just tempo rogue, but it turned into an odd rogue, right? Like it did like kind of the same thing, but just better. And then we looked at, like, for example, back, what was it? There's a special name for handlock. Handlock basically just turned into even lock, with even lock just being better because it could tap for cheaper. So Genn and like Baku didn't really make really new cool decks. They just made decks that kind of already existed, just better. And like, that's just in my mind how it did. Granted, yes, the even decks were different because they were even decks and you couldn't have odd cards, but the way they functioned, even lock just draws a bunch of cards, right? They play giant on 3 and 4. How is that any different than handlock back in the day with Twilight Drake? And then Baku with the rogue, being able to play very powerful minions every turn and do a lot of damage with the rogue deck early on. I mean, that's just odd rogue, right? And that's just before tempo rogue with Prince. So, I mean, these guys are very powerful, and they did open up a lot of, like, kind of, I don't know, again, not new decks, but decks to play, but they also limited and overshadowed a lot of these decks that we never even got to see, like, reign or even have a chance in the meta, because these guys were just so powerful. The hero power changing for the remainder of the game just gives your opponent such an edge if the other opponent's hero power is just limited by whatever its natural state is. And then also if the deck is just, again, not as good as these guys, it's a slaughterhouse. So I'm actually really excited to see these guys go, and the meta should shift. Like, it was already going to shift drastically, but now it's like, for sure, like full tilt, earthquakes, all the buildings are falling. What's going to be left? And then also, this isn't like as big of a deal, but all the complementary cards to Genn and Baku are obviously going to go away too, because there's no point to have complementary even and odd cards with the whole pack, or the whole point of odd and even gone. So moving to the solo adventure content, hopefully a nice little slash there. Good editing, Rob, before we have class tonight. You're doing fantastic. Keep it going. So I'll try to unpack this. There's a lot of stuff. This is going to this paid for solo adventure is going to cost $20. It's going to be on top of the already free one they're going to provide. At the end, if you complete everything in the adventure, it should have everything here to our left. In total, you'll get 15 of the new packs. You'll get card backs, 2 of them, and a golden pack when you finish. It's going to cost, like I said, you can use money, which will cost $20, or it'll cost 2,600 gold. If I'm correct, no, 2,800, because 7 times 4, Rob. Obviously, if you're spending 2,800 gold and you only get 15 packs in total plus the gold pack, it's not really like worth it in terms of value, because you're not getting, like, before when we used to do adventures like Karazhan, for example, which was like the worst adventure mode ever. It actually gave you like exclusive, cards that you could use instead. You know what I mean? It was like a little small expansion. It's not going to be. You're just buying it for the actual just playing of the solo adventure, because apparently there'll be a lot to it. Granted, this way, all this stuff. And then, of course, the packs that you get. But there's not going to be like any new cards. It's not going to be like the expansions releasing and there's an adventure mode with even more cards. It's not like that. So for those of you who are into the solo campaign type stuff, they're expanding on it. I personally am not a fan of it. I normally never play any of it. I don't do the tavern brawls. I don't do the solo adventures. I like playing against real people, not UIs. But again, this game isn't just for me, it's for everybody, and I know this is a big part, and a lot of people do enjoy this. So for those of you who do like it, they're expanding on this, and if you choose to buy it, you'll be showing your support in that region of the game. So moving to the arena experience, they've actually changed this a lot in ways that I wish would come to at least standard or to a new format. This has been something, so as we know, in between expansion, guys, is very stale, especially towards the last, the last month or second to last month. The cards just like, we've seen everything there is to see. We're just kind of like waiting for more cards, and that's the same thing for arena. So they've actually added a rotating card pool, which is something I don't like. If they would add a rotating kind of sets into the, like, they don't have to put it in standard, but just have like a new format, like standard rotating standard, something like that, it would be so awesome. So how this works is basically they're going to be changing it twice in between expansions. So every basically 2 months, the arena pool will rotate. The first rotate will consist of the basic, the classic Curse of Naxxramas, Whispers of the Old Gods, Mean Streets, Witchwood, and the first expansion this year. And then after 2 months, I'm assuming, which would be the 2 months they mentioned right here, twice every expansion, keeping things fresh, they'll rotate some of those expansions for other ones, or all of those expansions for other remaining ones. So we'll see how the rotations work, but I mean, this is just a great way to keep the game feeling fresh, to keep the cards being mixed up, and to allow like cool, new, and powerful abilities to be kind of not like unlocked, but like there's a lot of things we don't see because like, you know, not everybody plays wild, and I'm sure there's a ton of great wild cards that combo well with stuff that's right in today's standard mode that, you know, because we don't have the size of the player base playing it, sometimes we could be missing out on some really crazy combos that, you know, the wild players now aren't thinking about, just because the pool of them is not as big as like the pool of the standard players. So I mean, I could be totally wrong there. From there, re-rolling legendary quests. This is something that I really like. I had a quest to do a Monster Hunter run for like four or 5 months, and it was taking up one of my quest slots, and I'm not gonna do Monster Hunter because I don't want to do Monster Hunter. So don't make me do Monster Hunter. Let me re-roll that quest. So thank God now, if it's like, you know, play 10 games of Tavern Brawl, or you gotta play this, or, you know, you have to do the dungeon runs or whatever, you can just re-roll that shit out of that. We don't want that no more. So I'm glad they have this. For those of you who like care about that stuff, that's awesome. Get your free packs and whatnot. For me, one pack isn't worth me sitting down for an hour to play a solo campaign thing. All right, random card back options. This has been something I know this has been something a lot of people have talked about on Reddit, and that's the ability, if you have a lot of card backs, you know, to basically have it cycle through each game. It's going to give you a randomized card back from your collection, and I know that's really cool for a variety of different reasons, just to, you know, spice things up. A lot of people have been using the same card back forever, plus going into the card back selection screen, changing it after each and every game, or just changing it in general is kind of a hassle. Like most of us don't even think about it anymore. We just have our card back and we go. So the fact that have like a randomized card back, now you can be like, oh my gosh, that's so cool, like look at all these cool card backs I have, I deserve it. So a little cool feature, nothing huge, but again, just like small things like this, like being rolled out often, like make the world a difference. Like, believe it or not, like random card back off, and that sounds stupid for someone who doesn't play Hearthstone, or for like it just like, why, like, you know what I mean? But like for us, we know that's like a little cool feature. It's just like, all right, they listen a little bit, so cool. Smarter deck builder. This is I think this is a really important thing for the newer to intermediate players. Right now, when you're building a deck, and like let's say you don't have a proper card when you like import a deck list, and it's like, oh, what do you want to replace this card with, and it's fucking ass. You know what I mean? It's not great. It's not a great system at telling you what actually is in your collection that would fit best for the card that you don't have. And I think improving on the, like, you know, infrastructure of being able for the game to provide you with good information so that you can base your deck building off of is going to be really, it's pretty important to newer and intermediate players, and at least in my eyes, because it gives them a good idea of like, okay, like, this is how I should think about cards. Like, the game says this is similar to this card, and I have this card. So, like, you know, they're able to build decks and be like, well, I like this cool combo. What are other cards that are similar to that? Oh, the game says these are. Okay, let me think about it this. Because right now, it's just, no. You don't listen to nothing that game says. No. That, it'll make you play an angry chicken deck, all right? And no one's playing an angry chicken deck. And then from there, also a small little, like, you know, here you guys, thanks for hanging out in Hearthstone. From between March 25th and April 2nd, if you log in, you'll get 1 pack each from the rotating sets that are leaving. So you get 3 free packs if you log in basically in between this week. And then that is it. That's a lot of stuff to unpack. With this one announcement. I'm sure, you know, the new expansion, because we don't know what the new expansion will be. We know it's the Year of the Dragon, but we don't know what it is yet. So as more stuff rolls out, of course, I'll be covering it. But this is a lot to unpack. Please let me know what you think. Hopefully I didn't ramble on too much. I think the most important stuff that we're going to get the most feedback about is the Hall of Fame cards, the arena changes, and, you know, what the Year of the Dragon will bring, and of course, you know, Genn and Baku, that falls under the Hall of Fame card. So with that, thank you guys for watching. Hopefully you've enjoyed, and I will see you whether it be on Twitch or in another YouTube video. With that, I'm Robert Warshak, and happy whatever the hell day it is.